fatal heart impacts, past painful scars. In fact, I blast tasteful bars and pass. I back up my actions, fact don't ask, grab reactions, jacked attack with every word, then act with class as they hear me snap. I got nothing to lose, cause I fought and felt the bruise. Now I'm not the one confused, call the shots and they produce. I ain't lost, I'm finally loose. Pick a new silver excuse, I need the views to boost me to a new abuse of being used. Everybody wants a piece now, y'all can rest in peace now. You're dead to me, so peace out. Remember, you're discreet now. Get ready for defeat now.
Alrighty, hello everybody. This is Kirusho here, and now, whenever we last left off, we did have Janemba be introduced. Along with that, Hisashi did face off against him. Janemba's power level is unknown at the moment. As for Hisashi, his current power level at times 40 is 520 billion. And he's ready to fight. As soon as he does actually get close to Janemba, Janemba and him do immediately begin to go back and forth. And go for a brawl. Now, Janemba, he appears to be evenly matched with Hisashi, as the two just start fighting and going at each other, throwing left hook after right hook, before the two do break apart and Hisashi does actually back away, trying to blast away at Janemba. Janemba quickly just blocking them all with a sword as he actually does bring up his finger, before sliding it out in front of him. Hisashi confused, seeing stars. As Janemba quite simply just does it once again, and Hisashi is blasted away. Now, as that does actually happen, Inko does decide to rush in, going up to times 40 Kaioken. And her power level is at 480. Her trying to fight Janemba with Hisashi. Now, Midoriya actually does go to step in, however, Vados does stop him, stating that he cannot get involved yet. What are you talking about, Vados? Those are my parents down there. Besides, what about you? I'm sorry. Can't you get involved? No, I cannot. Why? You always say that you'll pull us out of the fire before. Why can't you do it now? Because I was simply just not informing you of why I could not. I cannot interfere with the purpose of mortals, and this creature appears to be mortal, not a god. What? So you're saying that Yes, if he takes them both down, he will kill them. Now, Midoriya does begin to get extremely angry at that, as the fight does continue on. Hisashi and Enko do appear to get some good blast off at the guy, and fighting him. However, it does reach a climax. Hisashi and Enko, they're both throwing hands back and forth, the man simply just dodging and weaving in between them. Both of these two extremely surprised. As Midoriya, he is still trying to figure all this out, trying to get a good read on this man's power level. Him beginning to ask Vados questions as the battle is going on. Does she know anything more about that mark? Her saying yes. It is the Time Breaker mark. Going on to state that a particular set of demons do use it, and in fact, it is what they use to power up quite a lot of powerful opponents, believing that this must be what is giving him the ability to overpower these two. Mina, quickly, asking Vados if she can try something, and Vados does agree. Mina bringing her hands up as she begins to try and focus on Janemba. Everyone just staring confused, as she goes on stating that she can possibly undo the magic, basically unbreak the Time Breaker. It would just take her a couple of minutes. In fact, possibly even 10. Now, with that being said, she's given 10 minutes. As she does try and maintain focus, the intense battle down below continuing on, as explosions begin to roar across the battlefields. And eventually, Hisashi and Inko are both taken down. Now, as Janemba actually does grab his sword, he begins to go and walk over to Hisashi. As Midoriya actually does fly in, going on the offensive. As soon as he does fly in and throw out a times 40 punch, Janemba immediately does catch it, and hold Midoriya off, catching him off guard. What the hell? You were just even with my father. How are you even with me? An evil grin coming on Janemba's face, as he brings his leg up and immediately kicks Midoriya upwards into his ribs, knocking the wind out of him. The only thing Midoriya can register in his mind is this guy's strong, before quickly being thrown away. And Momo actually does begin to intervene. Now, Momo tells Mina to hurry up on that, powering up to times 20 Kaioken. Now, she is at 360 billion, but she does believe that she can at least be of some help, as she does begin to at least charge up a beam before trying to blast off of this giant man. Now, this is where Midoriya, he actually does look up to see this. This giant villain immediately bringing his hand up before smacking the beam away, and surprising Midoriya. Now, Hisashi, he does get back up onto his feet, and power up to times 50 Kaioken, going up to 650 billion, as the fight begins to continue. Now, as these four are fighting, or these three currently, Inko on the ground unconscious somewhere, heavily injured. Hisashi does actually begin to pick up on this man's power level. It would rapidly jump up and down. However, he does know a good way to force his true power out, as he does actually try and drop down. As he does get a good distance away, he drops down to times 40, his body being unable to maintain 50 for this much longer. Now, as this does happen, he does power up a blast before sending it straight at Janemba. And Janemba, he does go to kick the blast away. Now, as soon as he does bring his leg up and hit the blast actually does begin to hurt him. Him having to power up quickly and bring his hands out to grab the blast. As the blast, the amount of force Hisashi is putting behind it, keeps pushing Janemba, him being sent flying away and into the nearby mountains, as the blast just keeps going, before Janemba at full power is able to kick the blast upwards high into the air. Janemba, his full power, is actually quite astonishing. His full power is at 850 billion. And Hisashi, he feels exactly how outclassed he is, as Janemba disappears, before arriving directly in front of Hisashi once again. This time, kicking him directly upwards into the gut, before grabbing him by his throat and punching him across the face, with a sadistic smile as he begins to start laughing over and over and over again. Now, Midoriya, he's angry, and he begins to rush in. As soon as he does get close enough, he's able to actually try and land an attack on Janemba, punching downwards into the back of the guy's neck and trying to attack more and more. Janemba quickly spinning around and looking straight at the boy, as he does one thing. He brings his hand up, and Midoriya, he's unsure of what he's doing, as Janemba simply just disappears, him dismantling. Midoriya is surprised, as Janemba arrives directly behind Midoriya and smashes him directly within both of his ears, before sending a blast directly into his back, sending Midoriya flying down into the ground. And he does try and get back up, in a lot of pain. Blood pouring out of one of his eyes, and his nose, along with him not being able to hear. A ringing sound being just about it. As Midoriya does look up, looking as Momo is currently trying to heal Hisashi's wounds. Now, after that does happen, Hisashi goes flying back into attack. And Momo, she actually does begin to power up. As soon as she goes to times 20, you do actually see her take a stance. And, with her arms outwards, she does try and power up to times 40. Midoriya watching that as he tries to scream at her to stop. Now, he tries to scream at her that if she does that, she's going to blow out her arms, as she does rush into battle. Now, Hisashi, after getting his Zenkai boost, is still not even strong enough to battle against Janemba. And Momo herself, she's at least on somewhat close to the par. Now, as Midoriya himself does get back onto his feet, he tries to heal his wounds. Him quickly healing his ribs before trying to head back into battle. Now, as soon as he does get back in there, he, his father, and Momo are all fighting. All of them giving it their all against his opponents, being able to actually overpower him. Before one thing does happen. He, not only does he curl up into a ball, but he then quickly lets out all of his energy, being able to blast away at and actually impale Midoriya with some sort of spikes, as he gets sent flying backwards into the ground. And he does try and get back up again, pulling a spike out of his shoulder as he gets to his feet, and pulling the other one out of his leg. Watching as Momo, she is actually injured too. Her just laying there in base form as she's trying to get the spike out of her chest. As soon as Midoriya does run over and look down at her, he quickly tells her that it's going to be okay, pulling the spike out of her side and beginning to heal her injury, as she's not saying anything with blood pouring out of her mouth, as she begins to try and form a sentence. Midoriya telling her not to talk, and it's going to be alright, it's going to be alright. As her eyes do actually dart back up towards the sky. Midoriya turning and seeing his father still fighting. As Janemba does one single thing. As soon as Hisashi does throw out both of his hands to try and fight, Janemba just simply catches both of them, before opening his mouth, and a large beam being fired directly into his father's face. As soon as Hisashi does let go, he tries to bring his hands up to defend himself, Janemba shattering both of his arms with a single punch, before just grabbing his dad by his throat and quickly twisting. Midoriya, feeling his father's power, disappear. Now, Janemba then just throws the body straight out forwards, towards Midoriya. Midoriya completely shocked and entranced by this, his mind beginning to try and process what just happened. Now, as Midoriya does go to reach out for it, the body explodes. And Midoriya, he's trying to grab away at scraps of his father's uniform, catching one just as it begins to burn in his hands. Midoriya dropping down to his knees, and feeling nothing but pure rage and anger, as the scrap burns away and turns to ash. Now, Midoriya's rage, his emotions, they begin to run wild, as Vados does actually pay attention to Midoriya. As Mina is quickly still chanting, she actually does open her eyes after she heard what happened. And she does see Midoriya simply just on his knees. As we will cut to Momo's perspective. Midoriya begins to grit his teeth and scream out in anger as his hair flashes yellow. Momo, surprised. Midoriya doing it once again. Before Midoriya, he simply just begins to let out a large scream. Now, as soon as Midoriya does go Super Saiyan, he does go a step beyond, Janemba's face emitting surprise. As Midoriya, he doesn't go to Super Saiyan 1, he goes to Super Saiyan Grade 2. Now, Midoriya's muscles are bulging out of his body and he just simply begins to scream out in anger. And, going off of instinct, he needs to kill the thing in front of him. Now, he quickly disappears, surprising Janemba, as he spins around to try and attack Midoriya, who quickly with one hand immediately smashes him across his jaw. Janemba getting sent flying away towards the ground. Now, Midoriya, he stands there, and he's still processing it, as he just begins to power up and start roaring with energy. Now, Midoriya's current power level. At normal Super Saiyan, it would have been 900 billion. However, it is 1.5 trillion, or 1.05 trillion. Now, Midoriya, he quickly just begins to fight against Janemba, being able to throw him around and simply just beat down into him. At this point, whenever Janemba does try and fight back with full power, Midoriya is quickly able to overpower him physically. And this time, whenever Janemba does try and release the spikes, as soon as they do make contact with Midoriya's body, they immediately get sent shattering. Before Midoriya, just with his right hand, he busts it down so hard that he punches Janemba upwards into the guts, knocking the wind out of him as he actually does go to grab Janemba by his throat, being able to get a hold of this little bastard. Now, as that does happen, Midoriya, he suddenly just begins to scream out in Janemba's face, as Janemba tries to blast him with a mouth beam. As soon as Janemba did do that, Midoriya did one thing, holding Janemba as he begins to choke the life out of him. With one hand, he brings it up, and he forces his hand to cover Janemba's mouth, as beams of light do still emit from it and try to crash through Midoriya's hand into the land underneath. Momo watching with absolute shock, as Midoriya sends an entire beam of energy straight into Janemba's mouth. Now, Janemba's body begins to expand and begins to get bigger. Before Janemba, he suddenly has his body start cracking. Now, Midoriya just keeps screaming and choking out Janemba as he keeps flooding his power into him. Before Janemba, he gets far too large, and he eventually does go pop. Now, as soon as that does happen, Midoriya, he simply just watches as little sparks do begin to float towards the ground, before he himself actually does go to land. As soon as he does, he begins to try and calm down, still huffing and puffing heavily. Now, with that, Vados is very impressed, This power, whatever it is quite intriguing. Now, with that being said, Midoriya does actually fall forwards and go to actually fall out of Super Saiyan. His body not having enough stamina to keep up this form for very long. Now, as soon as that does happen, we will cut back to Midoriya's house. Midoriya, he suddenly just wakes up. His body fully healed. Him thinking for a second that that was a terrible nightmare. As he does get up and go to walk out of his room. As soon as he does walk into the living room, you do have Inko, Mina, and Momo. Them all sitting down at the table that Midoriya has. The Kotatsu. Now, Midoriya is quite surprised. Actually, saying hi to everyone. Them all quickly trying to look at him. Now, Midoriya is confused about this. Did something happen? Now, Momo immediately gets up and basically teleports to Izuku, immediately wrapping him in her arms and saying that she's so sorry for what happened. Now, Midoriya is unsure as to what she means, before quickly realizing what happened. Wait, was that not a dream? No, Izuku, it wasn't. Your father, he's gone. Now, Midoriya, he actually does feel a bit angry about that, along with saddened. Now, before they can even continue mourning, you do have Vados, who does actually bring up the idea of bringing him back with the Dragon Balls. What? Yes, the Dragon Balls. But we already used them this year. Oh my, did you? Yeah, we brought back everyone who died in the Saiyan War. Ah, alrighty then. Well, this will take me some time. Huh? Now, Vados teleports, leaving. Now, she will be gone for a few days. Meanwhile, Midoriya, he actually does try and get information about what happened. Him learning that apparently he did something to kill the opponents. Now, Midoriya, he gets an explanation from Momo. His hair went yellow, and his power skyrocketed. He was stronger than his Kaioken self, and he killed the opponents within seconds. In fact, her going on to say that she made him pop like an actual balloon. Now, Midoriya, he doesn't really say much to this. However, he actually does go outside and try and focus on the strange power. Now, Midoriya, he begins to try and power up. Now, as soon as he does begin to power up, we do have Midoriya, whose hair begins to at least try and glow yellow. And as Midoriya just keeps screaming and screaming, it keeps trying to happen. Midoriya trying to turn himself into a Super Saiyan. However, he does eventually fall over, quite exhausted, and unable to transform. Now, with all of that being said, I do hope you guys enjoyed, and have an amazing night. I'll catch you guys in the next part.